Bienvenidos and welcome to episode 5 of LatinLuxe Chronicles. We're your hosts, Bianca, Rita, and Jennifer. New episodes drop every other Wednesday.
Be sure to subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and also remember to follow us on Instagram under LatinLuxe Chronicles.
Jennifer, what do we have coming up in today's episode?
On today's episode, we will be discussing raising children with special needs and health impairment.
So, as many of you know, April is the month in which we celebrate autism spectrum disorder awareness and acceptance. This month has a very special significance to me and my family because I am the parent of 2 children on the ASD spectrum. As my family celebrates this month, I always think about parents who have children with special needs or health impairments. There are many of us going through life raising our children and undergoing just a similar journey. So the LatinLuxe team is actually comprised of 3 moms who have children with special needs and health issues. We thought that maybe if we shared our stories as a way to kind of celebrate our children, other children out there with similar issues, create some solidarity with parents, and hopefully bring some light to the struggles that many of us face as we raise our kids. So Jennifer and Rita, do you kind of want to share your experience with our audience?
Yeah, definitely a big one.
I can get started. So I have, as y'all know, I have 2 boys, and the oldest one, let's start with the youngest one first, because that one we started first. So the youngest one, I noticed that he wasn't speaking as clearly, and it's so funny because I don't even know if it's funny, but like he was 2, and his pediatrician's like, "Oh, he's not saying these words," and I thought, 2, like what, like, I thought, okay, I just didn't think, I don't remember. I guess the oldest one was speaking clearly, and he would speak for the youngest one. So I just thought, he's just speaking for the youngest one, answering for him all the time. But the pediatrician had said, I think you should take him to see, to get evaluated for speech. And where I work at, I work with a lot of people who do that, or who, with,
are familiar. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they had convinced me, and because I thought, well, wow, he's so young. Like and they had all said like early intervention, like
right.
Get him, take him in. And so we did. And we met with a speech therapist. And so sure enough, we started taking him twice a week. And at 2 years old, started taking him twice a week to see a speech interventionist, and they were working with him. And then he turned 3, and then at 3, we enrolled him in school. And so he started going to school, and he was still seeing a speech therapist there. And then, but the speech therapist there at the school, she just kept saying, like, thank you so much for taking him to see a speech therapist when he was really young, because early intervention is so good for him. And she said, like, he's doing so great. Like, we're going to dismiss him now because he has caught up to the 3-year-olds, and he's making leaps and bounds. And it's just amazing, and so we appreciate you taking him for that. And I didn't realize, like, wow, yeah, early intervention is so...
It made a difference.
Yeah. It did. And, you don't hear that in other...
I think catching it early is important too, because sometimes as parents, you were talking about how with your oldest, you thought he was just speaking for his younger brother. And a lot of parents are probably thinking the same thing if they have a younger child, that there is a delay. So I mean, that's important too, the early intervention and catching it early as a parent.
Yeah. And it's easy not to notice with those little ones, because by that time you're so busy and you're so used to the flow of your first one that you're like, oh, they're good. Like, we're focusing on this, and it's easy to miss. So props to you for sure.
Thanks. And then, we like, I talked to my mom about it, and she's like, ¿Qué es eso? ¿Quién necesita? What
Está muy chiquito. ¿De qué hablas?
Yeah. He's fine. Like, on his own.
Tú no hablaste hasta los 5 años. Oh,
or they always say they're just a late bloomer.
Yeah.
They're a little delayed, but they'll catch up.
Yeah. Like, no, he's fine, Jennifer. Like, you guys were like that too, and I'm like, no, I should probably go take him. So we did, and it helped a lot. So we dismissed him. They dismissed him from speech, and he's now he talks a lot, even more than what he's supposed to say. He talks. But but then the oldest just recently So he wears glasses. The oldest one wears glasses, and he's been wearing glasses. So he'll be 9. So he's been wearing glasses for about maybe 4 years, 3 to 4 years. So just recently, his teacher came to me and said, or no, I'm sorry. Well, his teacher said he needs glasses, and I thought, or he needs to like up his prescription because he cannot see, and he's sitting in the front of the board. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
said, yeah. So then I asked his nurse, his school nurse, to check his vision, and she checked his vision and hearing, and she said yes. She said he failed his vision. He's going to need glasses, and she said, and he also failed his hearing. So I want to check him again in about 3 weeks. And I thought, okay. So I took him again 3 weeks, and she checked him, and he failed it again. And she said, now you need to take him to an audiologist because he's already failed twice with me.
Right.
So I took him to an audiologist recently, like back in November. And the audiologist, she checked him, and she said, yeah, he didn't pass. Not even like with the hearing, like with the hearing things in his ear, and then the little like sticky things that you put on the back of the head.
Yeah.
So she said, like there's a very high chance that he's going to need hearing aids.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what? Because she just kept asking me questions like, how is his speech? And because usually, like, where did he get it from? Like, where
Yeah. And usually those are leaked, right? Like that's like an indicator of something.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
And he
And
had not
so
shown any signs before, right?
he did not show any signs before. So
Yeah, because he never struggled, like nothing that you would have noticed. Yeah.
No, well, actually, you know what, Rita, now that you say that, so he plays sports, he plays soccer and baseball, and I noticed the coaches like yelling at him, and they would yell his name, and so I told him, I told him like, can you not, like, are you not listening to your coach? And he said, no, I do, but everybody's just screaming around me, and and so it's just hard for me to pay attention. And I thought, but they're screaming your name not once, but twice, 3 times, and you're just not listening. And he said, no. Like I can hear them. I'm just not paying attention. So I just thought, okay.
Well, and it's a hard setting too, because it's a sports venue, a sports event. So
Right.
it's like, you're probably thinking as a mom, like, oh yeah, well, I get you, honey, like it is loud or.
Yeah. And it's also like easy to categorize as like, oh, you're distracted, you're just not listening. Because I know there's times where like, like my son too, I'm like, no, you're not paying attention, like pon atención, like te llamé 3 veces. And it's like, we easily categorize it as like, dude, just listen, and it's hard to distinguish because if you have no clue, it's like you would never think,
No. Well, and with us, and so with me and my ex-husband, we're like, can you hear us when we're trying to talk to him? We thought he just has selective hearing because he only hears what he wants to hear. And whenever we're getting after him, he just does not hear us. But anything else, he's okay. So the audiologist did ask all these questions. Like, it just seems like we want to know what caused it, because if you're saying that he obviously he's not speech impaired, he doesn't have a speech impairment. Right. And he has really, really good grades, and he's super smart. And so we just thought, we don't know what's going on. So, she said, I want you to bring him again, like 6 weeks or something. And she checked him again, and he was still low. And she said, he's going to need hearing aids on both ears. Like the left ear is a little bit more higher than the right ear. But she said, I just don't want to put a hearing aid just on his right ear. And then she said, I just wanted to like level, to balance it out. And I remember, and so he got fitted for them and everything. And then, no, I'm sorry, he didn't get fitted for them. So she said, I'll check with the insurance. I'll check for everything. And then I'll call you back so you can bring him back. So I remember we were going, my son had a Spider-Man hoodie, and we were leaving the hospital, and we were in the elevator, and he looks at me, he's like, Mom, what are hearing aids? And I said, they're these tools that they're really tiny, and you put them in your ears and they make you hear better. And he had never seen them. And he said, I don't know, like, do you have a picture? So I pulled out my phone and I Googled it, and I showed him, and I said, this is a hearing aid. And he looked at it and he goes, and he pulled up his hoodie, and it's a Spider-Man mask, and he put it over his head. And it's like, it reaches up to here. So you can see like the big Spider-Man eyes, like, and you can
Uh-huh.
see tears coming down his face.
Oh.
And I said, you're going to be fine. And then like the elevator went down, the doors opened, and I couldn't talk to him anymore about it because there was people waiting. And then I like held his hand and we walked outside of the hospital, and then we got into the car and he just started crying. And he said, the kids are going to make fun of me. And I don't know what to do. And why do I need them? I'm already wearing glasses and now I have to wear hearing aids and they're going to pick on me so much. And then so I just tried to talk, and I said, you're going to be fine. Like, listen, like you're going to be okay. You know, you're so much more than hearing aids. Like you're such a smart kid. You're so sweet. You're a really good friend. You're so good at sports. Like all of that, like people are not going to pay attention to you wearing hearing aids. Like, and who cares? And you can
He really thinks about it because he is older. You know, if it would have been something where he was like, I don't know, 3 or 4, it's easier to grow up and like, oh, it's a part of me. Now it's like, oh, I have my identity. You know, I'm what, 9 years old. And it's like, now you're telling me I have to wear this. And now how's that
and
gonna
they're aware of their like social like awareness is in now, you know, at that age. It's like they know, and unfortunately like kids can be so mean, you know. It's like some kids are so mean.
Kids. I know kids.
And like, you know, and that's the thing too. It's like the kids that are gonna have something to say, it's like you don't need to associate with those people anyway. Like
right. And so then I was like, as I was talking to him and telling him like, no, you're gonna be fine, you know. And he's like, hold on. And he said, I think I'm gonna throw up. And that's, as a mother, I witnessed like an anxiety attack, I think, because he's like, I can't breathe. Hold on. And I just said like, open the door, you know, open the window, open the door so you can get some air, because he was sitting behind me. And I said, you're gonna be okay. Like, take deep breaths. And I said, you're gonna be fine. I promise you, you're gonna be okay. Like, take deep breaths. And I mean, I've never witnessed him like this. And so he opened the door and he said, I'm okay. Like, I think after a quick minute or two, he said, I'm okay. And I said, okay, I promise you, like, you're gonna be fine. We're gonna get through this together, and I'm always gonna be here for you. And then we left. We went back to school, and then I'd say about maybe a week or a couple weeks later, we had to come back to the hospital so he can get fitted for them. And there, I think he was just like, cool, because they showed him like a magazine, and it's like they're like, pick whatever you want, like the colors and everything. And he's like, I want some camel ones, because the little thing that goes inside. And he's like, I want some black and white camel ones, and this and that. And they're like, okay, like I was just like, thank you, because the nurses and the doctors were like, these are so cool, like, you know, whatever color you want, buddy, and and all this.
Yeah, we've come a long way.
Yes. And then after that, in between those 2 weeks, so he plays baseball, and he had seen a little boy so my son's in 3rd grade, and so he had seen a little boy in 5th grade. And he's a really good baseball player, and he saw him playing baseball, and he has a hearing aid. And so I had already told the baseball moms about it, because the coaches were like yelling at him, like, and so I had told the baseball moms, like, hey, I he's going to need hearing aids. So they were like, oh, this 5th grader, you know, wears hearing aids too. Like, he should talk to him. And so, then that 5th grader, he finished playing baseball, and he passed by us, and I told my son, hey, look at him. And the mom of the 5th grader had already talked to him and said, hey, come and talk to him, to Lucas, to my son. And he said, come and talk to him. And he did. And Lucas is like, wow, like, you have hearing aids. And he was just like, you're such a good baseball player, you know? And the little boy's like,
it's still possible. Everything like is still a possibility. Yeah.
And the little boy's like, yeah, like, nobody pays attention to them. I forget about them, you know, like,
was that validating?
Like, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yes. And so then after that, and my cousin is his teacher. So then after that, I found out that my cousin is his teacher. So then after that, when we went to go get fitted, fast forward to the fitting, we got into the car, and I said, how do you feel? And he's like, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay.
I had a moment.
I said, okay. I said, I want you to talk to someone. I said, I want you to talk to someone. And remember that little boy that you saw in the baseball field who plays for 10U and he's a fifth grader? He said, yeah. I said, I want you to talk to his teacher because that's my cousin. And I just want you to ask any questions that you want. Like, I can't answer for you because I don't know another child that wears hearing aids. I don't have a student or I don't have, I don't know anybody. I said, but I want you to talk to her. And so we did. We called my cousin and she said, he wears hearing aids, but he is amazing. Like, he's so awesome. Like, he doesn't know it. Like, he doesn't, sometimes he forgets that he has them. The kids love him. They adore him. They did ask, like, I will warn you, they're going to ask about it. The very first day they were,
they're curious.
Yeah. They're curious. And you just have to say, like, hey, they're here to help me hear better. It just helps me hear better. Kind of like glasses. They help me see better. Like, my hearing aids help me. And then my son was like, that made him feel better. So thank you, my cousin. I know you're going to be listening to this because that helped so much. And then my son was like, I'm just going to tell the kids, I'm going to tell my friends, it's to help me hear Fortnite better or whatever. And then
it's like Spider-Man with the hearing lenses.
An advantage.
Yeah. And so then he got him. So then fast forward to he was going to go get him, and I kind of wanted to be there to take him, but I couldn't because I was sick that day. So my ex-husband took him, to go get them, and he calls me and he said, Jennifer, you should have seen his face when he put them on. He said, it's like those videos that you see of like children listening to their mother's voice for the first time. Yeah. He said, like, his face lit up. And he was like, you should have just seen. I'm like, did you get it on camera? He's like, no.
I know. That's what I was gonna ask. Like, did he record it for you?
Yeah. I said, did you get it on video? He's like, no.
Come on, it's his dad. We always forget to record things.
Never.
I know.
And he said, I wasn't expecting to hear that he was gonna
see a reaction like that.
Reaction. Because we just thought he could always hear us, like, not clearly, but he could just hear us.
That's amazing.
But he was just like, like, I can hear clear now. And so the doctor had mentioned, like, he could hear, he just always heard muffled. And like he was underwater. But
that makes him so much like
like,
imagine like how much stronger and like smarter and everything. Like, he's like, because he's been doing everything above and beyond with that.
Compensating. He's always had to overcompensate for that. For that need or if you will, a disability of his.
That's it.
So that's why he's had to find ways to be smarter, to be like,
and that takes extra. Yeah, that takes him to like a whole nother level of him having to like use his context clues and identify what they're talking, what they're discussing, understanding. Like, wow.
Well, and I even asked my cousin, I said, did you notice your student, like, because you're saying your student is super smart, like, did you notice a difference? She said, I did. She said, like, on spelling tests, she said, I noticed that, like, I would say a word and like now, I mean, he can write that word very, like, by clearly. And she said, because he can hear all the sounds to that word. Yeah. And I'm like, wow. Okay. So she said, I do notice. I don't have to call him several times, on him several times. And she said, so just a lot of things. I'll even ask him, she said, I'll even ask him, like, did you bring your hearing aids today? And he's like, no, I forgot him. And she's like, okay. And she said, because you can tell a difference. But she said, other than that, like, that's pretty much it. So he wears them now. The
How
students
long has he been wearing them?
Since January. So for about 2.5 months, he's had them. And so the students, his friends are like, dude, what are those for? And he's like, oh, they're to help me hear better. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. That's it. And then, I think now he likes the attention, like, oh, like those are cool. So I think he likes the attention.
Yeah. Well, and I also think kids nowadays, as much as we say, some kids are mean, a lot of like this generation of kids that are growing up, they have better affective filter, if you will. Like they have more empathy, not necessarily all of them, but they understand like, oh, there's kids here with me that have some kind of disability or whatever. They're more likely to be cool about it. Versus if it would have been when we were growing up, it's like, ¿qué tienes? What's wrong with you?
Yeah. His coaches, like it's crazy. I could tell in the soccer field.
Now he hears across the field. Yeah. They're like,
they're just like, wait, he tunes into the other team.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a couple things like that too. So the coaches are like, Lucas, you're first base today or you're outfield today. And like, that's all. They just tell him that and whoop, he heads over there and they don't have to yell at him. But then, so the other, we were talking on our way to school and I raised my voice at him because, he didn't do something and he was challenging me on it. And so I raised my voice and he's like, "Oh, mom, my ears hurt." And I'm like, "No," like, and so I kind of felt bad because I'm like, "Uh-oh, I raised my voice at him and maybe a volume, I don't know."
I would have been like, "Bájale el volumen."
So when I got to school, when I talked to his teacher and I said, do you raise your voice at him? He said, all the time. He's like, I raise my voice all the time at them. I said, does he complain that his ears? He goes, no. He said, don't let him fool you like that. Do not let him fool you.
Yeah. He's like, Mom, I didn't know you sound so loud when you get mad.
Like I love our kids, the way they are. And I love, the three of us have background in education. So we've had kids in our lives, prior to our own. But if given, they can use whatever, even if it's a minor disability, they will use it sometimes to their advantage when it comes to like parenting.
Yeah. So and then the other teacher was listening to our conversation. She said, my nephew, she said, when my sister like talks to him in a stern voice, he takes off his hearing aids and he's like, like, I don't, and I'm like, whoa. So so he used that line on me once and then that was it. But I want to let Rita talk, but so the other thing too is he didn't want to cut his hair. Like, I think he just wanted to let it grow out. Like, he looked probably just to cover them. But then last week he was like, no, Mom, you can cut my hair. I'm like, what? Are you sure? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's cut it. So I said, okay. So I took him to get a haircut last week. And the lady, she said, do you mind taking off your hearing aids so I can cut your hair? And he's like, sure. He takes them off, gives them to me. And then she goes, okay, now you're going. So she raises her voice.
Oh my gosh.
She raises her voice at him. And I was like, no, like he can hear
fine.
you. Like and she's like, oh, I thought he couldn't hear me with both ear. And like, now that he took his hearing aids off, I said, no, like he can hear. I mean,
you're like, it's limited, but he's not completely.
Yeah, I know.
Pobrecita, like she just like, okay, now you're going to sit up straight. Like she raised her voice and he's like,
and sometimes I think people think they're trying to like be nice and help, but then they like overdo it, and you're like, okay, like
right.
Which is important to let people know. Like, I think, like people that don't either have somebody in their family with these issues or whatever, it's okay to ask. We're not going to be mean or like, or say like
get offended
or feel uncomfortable. It's probably best if you ask like, hey, if I ask you to remove those, can you still hear me? And then they don't look like, like, hey, as they're screaming.
Or like, like how can I communicate with them?
Yeah. So we're trucking along, and I don't even, he's like just any other kid, I do, sometimes like, oh, how cute, or oh, pobrecito, like, no, you know what I mean? It's no, he's
good.
He's good. So we do need to, just to kind of finish it off, like we need to go back and get a genetics test just to see what happened with that. But those genetics tests take forever. Like we're on the waiting list to even get a genetics, like to get an appointment in. And then once you get an appointment in, it takes about 10 to 12 months. So it's just kind of waiting.
I'm glad you said genetics test because I remember, I had for me, I had a similar experience after the first one and then the second one when they were both identified. I thought to myself, like, man, there's couples out there that go get genetics testing before conceiving. And, most of us don't think about that. We just go like, why? Like, just go have your baby.
What are the chances?
Well, not only that, but it's not common practice, I guess, especially in our culture. So it's kind of like, we just go have kids. And then I always remember telling Ron, like, if I could go back and do things different, I think, or like if I ever have advice for people now, or like to my own kids, it's like, get tested. Because it does take forever. There is a long waiting list, but it's like, it's a peace of mind. And then when you choose to have kids, it's kind of like, okay, brace yourself, if you not, I don't want to say the risk, but what you're getting yourself into, the possibilities.
Yeah,
Right.
and more like educating yourself too on like how, to best help and stuff, right? Like the things that you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's harder
Yep.
after they're here and then you're like trying to learn as they're going through it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's so hard.
and he wears glasses, so that we need to keep an eye on too because he is nearsighted. And they checked his eyes, and I'm not sure. I don't know too much about it, but he's like at a -4, and for him being 8 years old, that's not good. So
Oh,
like they said, -9 is really really bad. So
yeah.
he's at a -4. So we have to because they did check. He did a urine test. He did, all of that. They did a CAT scan, a CT scan of everything, and everything came out fine. So they just want to see if there's a connection, like with the eyes and the hearing. So yeah.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna keep an eye on that. But yeah. So I think
Yeah.
just early intervention, and it helps because
Yeah.
we wouldn't have had caught it, like the whole hearing thing, and then
Right.
the speech
And
with my
like I
coach.
think an important thing to note too, like I think in all of our stories is like being open to receiving that information, like your teacher came and told you, and it's like, and it's hard sometimes as parents to hear things that something is
Mhm,
going on with your kiddo. But I
mhm.
think that's a really important point is like, being open to receive it so that you can know. Because most importantly, it's like, how can I help them?
How about you,
Right.
And so,
Rita? What about your kiddos?
yeah, I mean, mine is, similar to Jen's story. Like, I think, with my younger one, same thing. Like she mentioned, like you have your second one, and they kind of go under the radar because you're just trying to make it with the two kid life, And my first one, he was a little chatterbox. Like, we grow up we are in a bilingual household, so he was. Talking in English, talking in Spanish, like he would translate for my mom, translate for me. So he was just a little chatterbox. And I never had to think twice of like, if is he meeting his milestones? Does he have enough words? Because like, people would even hear him and they're like, man, he talks so well for his age, and like just always meeting those milestones. And so with the little one, I think, I started noticing around like two, for me, it was a concern because I remembered like how much, his brother spoke and, like, those kinds of things. And so I remember bringing it up, like opposite to your story, Jen, is when I brought it up to my pediatrician. She's like, no, he's fine. She's like, it's just because he's the younger brother. Like, she said the same thing, like brother talks for them. So like he hasn't had the opportunity, like as he gets around more social settings, like, he'll start talking some more. Like, let's keep an eye on it. Let's, kind of monitor. I think it was like at 18 months when I first mentioned it. And she's like, if by two we don't see progress or he doesn't have an X amount of words, I think it's like 50 words, then we'll start looking at what we can do. And like, and just from our background in education and working with kiddos, like we know like the best thing you can do is provide that early intervention, and so for me, I was like not okay. Like she kept telling me it was fine. We got to the 2 year mark, he still wasn't speaking well, he wasn't speaking at all. And I was like, no, like, I was like, she was like, let's, he's already progressed a little bit, not where we want him, but like, let's keep an eye. And I was already like, no, I'm gonna like reach out. And I started kind of doing some research on my own, like, reaching out to colleagues and people that I knew had been through the process. And we were able to go through ECI, which is the early childhood intervention, and we were able to get him identified for speech. And sure enough, like he qualified because he wasn't at that amount of words. And he started getting speech services, and it took us a long time. And that's another thing, like that I would advocate for anybody listening or going through a similar process is the sooner the better. Because like if you already notice something or you're concerned, like just do it. Like my thought was always like, it's not going to hurt if I put him in speech. Like if anything, it's just going to help him, like. And if it's an early case, like for your little one where he was exited at 3, like amazing, but if it's not, like at least we started that work.
Mhm.
Because it took us a long time. Like I think I started the process, and it was like well over 6 months before, because we went through ECI, that we can get services and things like that and go through the testing. And so, and there, I mean, there might be other routes, but for us, it took us a while. And so when he started the speech, like we noticed some progress right away, and so he's been getting the services, and at 3 he was able to qualify with our school district, so he's getting some speech services now. And I mean, it makes a world of a difference. Like he's still right now, like he's still he's progressing. He's still struggling. Like we're just getting to the point of producing right now, and then we're gonna work on the like refinement of like sounds and all that stuff, articulation. But and with him, like one thing that too is with the speech, a lot of times come other behaviors, right? Like another thing that we're looking into for him is like once he gets old enough, is doing the auditory test because they know how you said like that is it could be a sign or a something that determines like maybe there's something else going on too. But right now, like he's so little that it's like if we rely on that sound one, like we'd have to do some other kind of testing. And so, we're going to keep an eye on that for him. And then the behaviors that come with it, because when you can't speak, you get frustrated or you're excited and you don't know how to express it. And so, that's been hard going through the process on the other side, like as a parent, like being in class and getting emails or getting a note and being like, Isaiah decided to throw a toy today, and it's just like, oh, okay, like I'll talk to him, but how much does a 3-year-old really remember when I tell him in the morning, like, no throwing toys, use your words, but he like, and that's our go-to is like, hey, use your words if you're frustrated. But it's like when you can, it's hard, and so that's kind of where we're going through. And at home too, like it's like with brother and sharing, and sometimes like people don't understand. And when you're out in a setting, like I think that's where it's hard too, because not everyone's going to be understanding. They're just going to be like, oh my God, that kid's wild. Like that kid's doing this and that. And, like Bianca mentioned, if they don't, some people don't ask, they'll just be quick to judge or assume. And so, that's kind of where we're at right now as a family is like working on our patience with him. And and even for me, like even though we do have a background in education, like I'm over here looking up, reading books and articles, like what kind of strategies can I use with him? Like how can I help him and give him tools that he can use to communicate better and things like that. And so we're kind of like just going through that process. But yeah, and I think same thing with like my mom or family, like they right away, like, and how that, I think on our last episode, we talked about nicknames and how right away, like, in the Latin culture, we put a nickname to it. And so everyone's like, ay, que travieso, and it's like, he is a travieso and he's a little too. And we've nicknamed him Tutis, it's like, because he are like, we know, but sometimes it's like it's not sometimes, and then I think in our family sometimes we think like, oh no, es que nomás es travieso, así es, mija, like así es, like no tiene nada,
He's a
and people
boy.
assume he's a boy, he's active, and it's like that might be some, but also like as a parent, like being his biggest advocate, like if it wasn't like if I hadn't moved on it, he wouldn't have received that speech service. And then now it's like, okay, what else? Like we need to just keep kind of like digging, like is there other things going on, because yes, he is very active and yes, he is travieso or whatever you want to call it, but it's like, what other things can we like support him in, and so that's kind of where we're going through and just growing the patience, because that's the hard part, is like just finding the ways to get to your kids and, like support them for what they need. But yeah, I would definitely say like, just being your kid's advocate and moving forward with what they need and figuring out ways to support them, so
Yes.
yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned earlier, Rita, about like as parents, sometimes we hear things from teachers and, we don't want to believe it and things like that. I think it's funny because I had the complete opposite of that experience for me. For me, like you said, we all have background in education. I was in the classroom for 8 years and I'm not special ed certified in any way, but for some reason, my administrators always thought this is a classroom where we should put SPED kids in. And perfectly fine. I mean, I loved it. I loved working with them, with their parents, with the SPED teacher. It kind of like just opened up me as it made me better as an educator, and seeing like
Right.
maybe that's what this other kid is struggling with, or like I can pinpoint things here. So when it came time for me to be a parent, I had my son and my first child, Jackson, and he was just kind of like a calm baby. And I always felt like something was up because I just felt like he wasn't like a big crier. He wasn't like anything like that. Like he smiled and, and like, and cooed and made sounds and everything. But I always felt like he was always just taking everything in, quiet and taking everything in. And I was just kind of like, So like this is me going through with him as, 1-year-old, 2-year-old. He's hitting all of his milestones the way he should, when we go and take him to the pediatrician and whatnot. um, I'm thinking, okay, it's just like little things that are curious about my kid, and then I start
Yeah.
noticing that when we put him like he started reading at 3. He was talking by like 1.5, maybe the latest, like full on talking. And then
Wow.
reading had, like close to 3 years old. He was just very smart, very bright. Took him, like
Mhm.
walking took him the longest. It took him longer to walk than to talk and to read and all that. And then I
Wow.
started notice like in a bath time, he starts putting like, he would always take his toys, like his rubber duckies or whatever, and line them up. Everything was always lining it up, lining it up.
Mhm.
And I was like, So my teacher brain was like already going somewhere with this, like,
Right.
okay, okay. And so then we hit like that magic number. It almost seems like 3 is a magic number for kids.
Oh yeah.
And he starts, becoming like very, I'm not going to say aggressive, but just rowdy and just like always like driven, all words that I had heard before as a teacher and said before as a teacher. He's driven by a motor. He is hyperactive. He's all these things, And I remember saying things to my family and even my husband and being like, hey, I think something's wrong with him. And he's 3 years
Mhm.
old, 2 years old, and they're like, no, no, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with him. You're just being an overprotective mother. You're
Mhm.
overthinking. I said, no, I feel it. I feel it. I've worked
Yeah.
with kids. I
Yeah.
know.